All right, so today we're diving deep into Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely.
The revised and expanded edition.
That's right.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, we're going to unpack all those notes and highlights, figure out what's really driving our decisions, even when we think we're being totally logical.
I think we'll find it's less logical than we think.
Exactly. And Ariely starts off with this concept of relativity, which basically means we don't judge things in isolation.
Right.
So he uses this example of house hunting.
Okay.
Let's say you're looking at 3 houses, all in your budget.
Okay.
One's a modern design,
Okay.
and the other 2 are classic colonial style.
Got it.
It gets interesting when one of those colonials needs a new roof.
Uh-huh.
So the seller drops the price.
Right.
Suddenly, that colonial seems like the best deal, even if the other houses are objectively just as nice.
It's like our brains are wired to compare,
Yeah.
and find the best within a set of options,
Right.
even if it means overlooking something great that's outside that set.
Exactly. Have you ever fallen for that classic sale trick
Oh, all the time.
where something seems like a steal just because it's marked down from an inflated original price?
Absolutely.
Ariely calls this the decoy effect,
Yes.
and he shows how it plays out in all sorts of situations.
Like the bread makers.
Yeah. Remember the example of Williams-Sonoma and their bread makers?
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
They were having trouble selling their initial model
Right.
until they introduced a bigger, more expensive one.
The decoy.
Exactly. Sales of the original bread makers skyrocketed.
Made it look like a bargain.
Right.
Yeah.
It's wild how easily our perception of value can be manipulated.
It really is.
And it makes you wonder
What?
what other invisible forces are shaping our choices.
Well, that brings us to anchoring,
Okay.
which is the idea that the first piece of information we encounter can have a surprisingly strong influence on our subsequent judgments,
Okay.
even if that information is totally random.
You mean like how the sticker price on a used car can set the stage for the entire negotiation?
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
Ariely did this fascinating experiment
Uh-huh.
where he had students write down the last 2 digits of their social security numbers
Okay.
and then bid on things like cordless keyboards and bottles of wine.
Interesting.
It turned out that those random digits
What?
actually affected their bids, even though they had nothing to do with the value of the items.
That's crazy.
Those with higher social security numbers bid significantly more.
That is so interesting.
Crazy, right?
Yeah, so being aware of this anchoring effect is crucial,
Especially for big decisions.
especially in situations where we're making big decisions, like if you're negotiating a salary or buying a house.
You could save a lot of money.
Knowing how anchoring works could save you a lot of money.
Yeah, for sure.
It's all about recognizing these mental shortcuts our brains take
Right.
and learning to adjust accordingly.
Exactly.
All right, let's move on to something I know I struggle with. Procrastination.
Oh, yeah.
Ariely uses this great example from his own classroom.
Interesting.
He gave his students 3 assignments with deadlines spaced out throughout the semester.
Okay.
One group got to set their own deadlines.
Mhm.
The second group had fixed deadlines.
Okay.
And the third group had no deadlines at all.
No dead on.
Deadlines.
What do you think happened?
Well, I'd probably procrastinate the most with no deadlines,
Right.
but fixed deadlines set by someone else, I'd probably be more likely to buckle down.
You nailed it. Turns out the students with self-imposed deadlines did better than those with no deadlines.
Okay.
But those with fixed deadlines from Ariely performed the best.
Wow, interesting.
This really speaks to the power of external accountability.
Right, even if we think we're good at setting our own goals.
Exactly. Think about it.
Yeah.
If you pre-commit to something, make that doctor's appointment, set a savings goal, schedule that workout, you're way more likely to follow through.
It's true.
Like, we need that extra push sometimes.
Yeah, even if it's from our future selves. Exactly. And speaking of things that influence us in ways we might not realize, let's talk about the incredible power of free.
Who doesn't love free stuff?
Right. Freeze is always a good thing.
Right.
Or is it?
That's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
Ariely argues that the idea of free
Right.
is such a powerful emotional trigger that it can override our rational thinking.
Give me an example.
Okay, think about those buy one, get one free offers
Okay.
at the grocery store.
Yeah.
We often end up buying things we wouldn't normally
Yeah.
just because that second one is free.
I see what you mean.
Even if it's something we don't really need or wouldn't even buy on sale.
Okay, I've definitely been guilty of that.
I think we all have.
You're making me realize that maybe I'm not as rational a shopper as I thought.
It's not just about being a savvy shopper, though.
Okay.
Ariely's research suggests that the allure of free can have a much broader impact.
Really?
Even influencing how we think about social interactions and relationships.
Wait, really? How so?
He talks about this idea of social norms versus market norms.
Yeah.
When we're operating within social norms, like doing a favor for a friend, we don't think in terms of money.
Right.
It's about reciprocity, kindness, those unspoken social agreements.
Yeah.
But when we introduce market norms like prices into social exchanges, things can get messy.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like if you offer to pay a friend a small amount for helping you move, it can feel weird and almost insulting.
Right.
Even though you're trying to be considerate.
You've unintentionally shifted the dynamic from a friendly favor to a transaction.
Right.
And that can undermine the relationship.
This is making me realize just how much our decisions are influenced by context.
Absolutely.
Even in ways we're totally unaware of.
That's a key theme that runs throughout Predictably Irrational.
Yeah.
We like to think we're making rational choices, but the reality is that our decisions are shaped by all sorts of hidden forces.
So the next time I'm tempted to grab that buy one, get one free deal, I'll definitely be thinking twice.
It's a good idea.
This is all so fascinating.
Yeah.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
Right.
What else does Ariely have in store for us on this deep dive?
Well, let's delve into a topic that's both fascinating and a little unsettling. The power of placebos.
Placebos.
Yeah.
You mean like those sugar pills that somehow make people feel better just because they believe they're getting real medicine?
It's more than just sugar pills.
Okay.
The placebo effect extends to all sorts of medical procedures.
Really?
And even to our perceptions of price and value. Ariely shares a personal story about his experience with a pressure suit.
Okay.
After he suffered severe burns.
Oh, wow.
He wore this suit religiously, enduring all the discomfort, convinced it was helping him heal. But later, he found out that it actually had no real benefit in his case.
Oh, no?
He'd gone through all that pain and discomfort for nothing.
Just because he believed it was working? That's both amazing and a little bit scary.
It is, isn't it?
It makes you wonder how much of what we experience is shaped by our expectations rather than objective reality.
It really highlights the power of our beliefs.
Yeah.
And how they can influence our physical and mental states.
So, if our minds can have such a powerful effect, is it possible to harness that power for good?
That's a great question.
Can we use the placebo effect to improve our lives?
That's a question researchers are still exploring.
I'm hooked. What other mind-bending insights await us on this journey through Predictably Irrational? This is seriously making me question everything I thought I knew about how I make decisions.
I know, it's fascinating stuff.
It is. Let's keep going.
Yeah, let's do it.
So are you ready to tackle another fascinating aspect of our Predictably Irrationality?
Hit me with it. I'm ready to confront my less than rational self.
Well, let's talk about honesty, or rather our capacity for dishonesty.
Ooh, okay.
It turns out we're not always as ethical as we like to think. I'm sure we've all bent the rules here and there, but what does Ariely have to say about this?
Well, he starts by pointing out this startling statistic. The total cost of all robberies in the United States is dwarfed by the cost of white-collar crime.
Wow. So we're not talking about petty theft here.
No, not at all.
We're talking about serious financial damage.
Caused by people we might consider upstanding citizens.
Exactly.
And Ariely suggests that the reason white-collar crime is so prevalent has to do with the nature of the currency involved.
Okay, how so?
Well, often it's not cold, hard cash.
Right.
But things like stock options or expense reports.
Okay, so it's easier to justify fudging numbers on a spreadsheet than it is to steal physical money from someone.
That's the idea. Ariely did these really clever experiments where he gave people the chance to cheat on a test to earn tokens that could be exchanged for cash later.
Interesting. So they weren't directly stealing money,
Right.
but they were still being dishonest for personal gain.
Exactly.
Okay, so what did he find? Did people cheat?
A surprising number did, even when the potential reward was relatively small. But here's the really interesting part. When he asked half of the participants to recall the 10 Commandments before taking the test,
The 10 Commandments.
their levels of dishonesty significantly decreased.
Wow. So just thinking about moral codes, even if they couldn't remember all 10 Commandments,
Right.
had an impact on their behavior.
It did.
It's like a little reminder of our conscience can make a big difference.
Exactly.
Maybe we should all carry a copy of the 10 Commandments in our wallets.
Or at least try to be more mindful of our actions, especially when it comes to those gray areas where it's easy to rationalize dishonesty.
Right. That makes sense.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about something a little less weighty, the peculiar power of ownership.
Okay, this should be fun.
Yeah.
I know I get weirdly attached to things even if I don't really use them anymore.
We all do.
It's like that old t-shirt I can't bring myself to throw away, even though it's full of holes.
Well, Ariely would say you're experiencing the endowment effect, which is our tendency to overvalue the things we own simply because we own them.
Okay, I'm definitely guilty of that.
We all are.
But why do we do this?
Well, Ariely uses this great example of basketball tickets.
Okay.
He held a lottery for students to buy tickets to a sold-out game.
Right.
After the lottery, he asked those who won how much they'd sell their tickets for.
Okay.
And asked those who didn't win how much they'd be willing to pay.
So you have a group of sellers and a group of buyers.
Right.
All vying for the same limited resource.
Exactly. The sellers consistently demanded a much higher price for their tickets than the buyers were willing to pay.
Really?
Simply owning the tickets, even for a short time, made them seem more valuable to the sellers.
So it's like that feeling of, this is mine,
Right.
somehow increases its value in our eyes.
Exactly. And this isn't just about material possessions, it also applies to ideas.
Oh, interesting.
Think about how tightly people cling to their political beliefs or how passionate they are about their favorite sports teams.
Yeah.
Once we take ownership of an idea, it becomes part of our identity.
Right.
And we're less willing to let go of it.
Wow. This has implications for all sorts of things.
It does.
From negotiating a salary to having a productive debate.
Right.
It makes me realize that we need to be aware of how ownership can bias our thinking.
Being aware is the first step. Now, here's another fascinating twist on ownership.
Okay.
The more effort we put into something, the more ownership we feel.
Oh, like when you build a piece of furniture yourself.
Exactly.
And suddenly, it becomes the most prized possession in your house.
Ariely and his colleague, Mike Norton, coined the term IKEA effect for this.
The IKEA effect.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's that sense of pride and attachment we feel towards something we've built, even if it's a wobbly bookshelf from IKEA.
This is making me realize just how much our perceptions are shaped by our experiences and the stories we tell ourselves.
That's a great way to put it. And it brings us to one of the central themes of Predictably Irrational. We're not always as rational as we think we are.
Right.
Our decisions are often influenced by factors we're not even aware of.
So where do we go from here? If we're all predictably irrational, is there any hope for us?
That's a great question for our next segment.
So if we're all walking around making these irrational decisions, is there any hope for us? Can we overcome these hidden forces?
Well, Ariely's message is actually quite optimistic.
Okay.
He argues that while we might be predictably irrational, that doesn't mean we're helpless.
Okay, so how do we break free from these irrational tendencies? Is it even possible?
It starts with awareness. By understanding the quirks of our own minds and the hidden forces that shape our decisions, we can start to make more conscious and deliberate choices.
So knowledge is power.
Exactly.
Even when it comes to our own irrationality.
Absolutely. Ariely talks about this idea of choice architecture,
Well,
which means designing environments that nudge us towards making better decisions.
can you give me an example of that?
Sure. Think about retirement savings plans.
Okay.
If people have to actively opt in,
Yeah.
enrollment rates tend to be lower.
Right.
But if they're automatically enrolled and have to opt out if they don't want to participate,
Yeah.
enrollment rates skyrocket.
So it's like taking advantage of our natural inertia,
Exactly.
but in a good way.
Right. By understanding our predictable irrationalities, we can design systems that work with our biases, not against them.
That makes a lot of sense. So what about on a personal level? What are some things we can do in our own lives to make more rational choices?
Well, one powerful tool is pre-commitment.
Okay.
Ariely tells this great story about how he helped some of his students overcome their procrastination.
Oh, yeah?
He gave them the option of setting firm deadlines for their papers with penalties for late submissions.
Interesting.
Those who chose this pre-commitment strategy ended up performing better than those who didn't.
That's a great reminder that a little bit of structure can go a long way.
It's like giving our future selves a helping hand.
Yeah.
We know we might be tempted to procrastinate or make impulsive decisions later on.
Right.
So we set things up in advance to make it harder to stray from our goals.
This is all starting to feel really empowering.
I think so, too.
It's like we can outsmart our own irrational tendencies.
Exactly. And Ariely offers other practical tips, like setting clear goals, breaking down large tasks into smaller, more manageable chunks.
Okay.
And even using technology to help us stay on track.
So it's about being proactive and creating systems that support our rational selves.
Absolutely. It's not about becoming perfectly rational robots,
Right.
but about being more mindful of our decision-making processes and making choices that are truly in our best interests.
Well, I've got to say, this has been incredibly insightful.
It has been a fascinating topic.
It's like we've been on this journey exploring the hidden forces that shape our choices. And now we're equipped with the tools to navigate those forces more effectively.
I agree.
And to our listeners, if you've been as captivated by this deep dive into Predictably Irrational as I have,
I
highly recommend picking up a copy.
For sure.
And diving in yourself.
You won't regret it.
It's a fascinating and entertaining exploration of the human mind, and it's packed with insights that can help you make better decisions in all areas of your life.
Couldn't agree more.
Trust me, it's well worth the read.
Absolutely.